Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flizanes, your host and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, I have brought a very special guest back onto the show. He has been absent for a long time, and I know you miss him, and he is none other than, dun-dun-dun-dun,
Doug Sandler. Yeah! The crowd goes wild. Hey, what's up with that? Why haven't I been on the show in a long time?
Well, we do more of the Inner Circle membership podcast, you and I. And of course, we have 10 other shows, so that's why. Because I have plenty of other content. And while some people really enjoy our banter, some don't. So,
Are you saying that I get on people's nerves?
I think it's just the level of expectation of what people have for the show when it comes to content. So, your shows are more relaxed, conversational, not really that structured, and I'm
kind of like my entire life. Relaxed, conversational, and not really that structured.
Right. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today. So first of all, happy...
Are you breaking up with me?
No, just chill out for a minute.
Okay.
Take a breath. First of all, happy almost New Year, everyone. And probably by the time you do hear this, it will be 2021. So happy New Year. It is currently the 28th of December as of the recording of this episode. And I wanted to share with you, and I talked about it last week when we talked about, New Year's rituals and the ritual that I do and that Doug has done with me now for 2 years. And we're going to do it again this year with Michael Neely again. Like the importance of reflecting on, and the exercise is called reflection. So if you didn't hear that show, I'm offering a free download for anybody who wants to take the exercise that we do and do it for yourself. If you don't have a practice and you'd like to consider doing a practice, you can go to jjflizanes.com/NYE, which of course stands for New Year's Eve. It's just a 2-page document. The first page is the instructions. The second page is what you fill out. And so if you're with one other person or 5 other people, print as many copies as you need for everyone to participate. So why is it, I was getting ready for today's episode and jumping in the shower and just getting ready. And I was looking at the fact that we started a podcast together this year. So you became a co-host on Something to Whine About. Like if we go back and look at this year on a business level, which we're not going to do completely, this show's going to be about relationships, but like a lot has happened.
Yeah. And all to the positive. I mean, I know the world seems to be crumbling down around us from everybody else's perspective, but from our perspective, it's actually been a really good year.
Now, that's not to be insensitive to those of you that have struggled this year, but hopefully you heard the show that I did with Dee about being open to changing your direction. She is in the mastermind, and she's DeeArntStudios.com. So if you heard Dee's show, Dee is an artist, and her way of making money, in her eyes at the beginning of the year, was to do art shows. Well, the situation of the world canceled in-person art shows. And so, of course, the first instinct is to throw your hands up and say, well, I guess that's it. I guess I can't make money. I guess I'm done. And I said, no, this is the world, the universe, your higher self calling you into something new. And of course, we figured out what that was. She kind of already knew, but brought it to the surface, took action on it, and became very successful in an environment where she thought she was doomed. So with that theme of today, one of the things that I really appreciate about 2020, I did a show with Lisa Thomas in our Inner Circle. There is an Inner Circle podcast. And she and I talked about what she was seeing with her clients, with people in the world, like how they were struggling. And she said, when it came to relationships, this was a really interesting time because now relationships are getting challenged to a new level. And you're either going to realize that you're running away from the fact that you shouldn't be in this relationship anymore, or you're going to be pulled closer together. And even for those of you that have realized that your relationships can't go on anymore and it's devastating and you're sad and you're frustrated, I would invite you to take an opportunity to actually appreciate that in some way, because how often do we stay stuck in situations for years and years because it's comfortable, but it never really satisfies our true calling or our greater selves or where we want to go or who we want to be. And so while I know it's painful and uncomfortable and inconvenient, being forced to look in the mirror in a relationship and say, you know what, this is it. Enough is enough. I don't want to live the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years of my life And I'm not blaming anybody, you or the other person. It's just, I think it's a wake up call. So I wanted Doug and I to come on today and share some of the things that we've learned and implemented this year that have worked for us and things that we still need to work on. Because I'll tell you that at the beginning of this pandemic, coming back from Italy after my birthday trip and sort of being on a high of life and wanting to book the next trip already, and then being forced to stay inside was a transition at first, but we made the best of it. I definitely put on a few pounds this year because of the lack of going to the gym, even though I did more cardio, and then of course eating more. And I had to make peace with that, and I have made peace with that because I ate more. Well, not at first. At first, we drank and ate and and went to the grocery store a lot. But then, as time went on, I decided I wanted to support restaurants. I wanted to support local restaurants that I care about and bakeries. And of course, it's a whole hell of a lot of carbs. And so I'm okay because I know that it won't last forever and it will release and I will go back to sort of how it was before or make it even better in the future. So, the weight thing, we had a lot of fun making pasta and, we at first there was some fun. And then, as time went on, things started to sort of normalize. Doug and I work at home anyway, so none of this was that big of a shock. We didn't really change our lifestyle that much. So, but a couple of little, I don't know, fights, sort of an underlying fear that we both have kind of surfaced. And we had a couple little nitpicky fights that sort of led into a bigger fight, and we'll address that. But let me pause for a second and invite Doug to come back in here. So honey, this year in 2020, first, what do you want to say about 2020 in general, and then about your attention to or acknowledgement of or focus on relationships?
Well, let me go back to 2020, the beginning of 2020, and it started out just like any other year, with the exception of we spent some time building some goals when we did some goal setting from 2019 into 2020, and that for me was a chance for me to really reflect on the things that I probably haven't been doing over the last many years, which is actually putting some attainable action steps and some processes in place to get to where we want to be. It's not just like throwing a dart up on a dartboard and saying, this is where I want to be. It's actually designing a program, designing a life, designing relationships, whether it's business or personal relationships, around the goals that you set. It's really hard just to go into a relationship and say, I want more, or I want it better, and not really have a plan in place. It doesn't just the idea of saying it. It's great to say it, and it's certainly great to have a positive outlook on your relationship. But unless you put some action items in place, a couples dialogue. We've done couples dialogue a couple of times over the last 12 months, and I think they really add a huge amount of value to the relationship. You have a chance absolutely to see what your partner is thinking and feeling without any direct connection to being responsible for solving it for your partner. You're just kind of listening to what your partner is having issues with. And you're also tying that back to some issues that they may have had, during childhood, when the wounds were created, or maybe even in adulthood when the wounds were created. So I would say, looking back at the beginning of 2020, it started out as a year not unlike many other years, but we put some definite action items into play when it came to goals and things that we wanted to achieve. Then the pandemic happened and the world kind of stopped. Now the world stopped from the world's perspective. We kind of went about doing the same things that we were doing before. I mean, working from home, our eating thing changed a little bit. And by the way, whatever weight that you think that you put on, I love it. I mean, I don't see it at all. So I'm quite happy with you and where you are, but that's not for me to say, that's for you to say. So I think from a relationship perspective, I think the world environment, I think it put us together. I think it gave us a chance to see what we could actually do more of together. We started our mastermind in 2020, right? Didn't we start our mastermind
January.
in 2020? We started a couple of podcasts together, you and me, co-hosting sales training for podcasters, and I did more work with Something to Whine About and became a co-host of that just recently. So I think overall, while the world looks at the situation and saying, "Oh my gosh, doom and gloom," maybe again, I see that that's kind of what you're seeing all over the internet is doom and gloom. But in reality, for me, it's been a great year for our relationship. It's been a great year for business. And yeah, I could have looked at it and said, holy shit, all of those live events that I was doing back in DC, tens of thousands, if not over $100,000 in business this year just evaporated. Well, I replaced that income pretty quickly using the time that I would have dedicated to traveling back to the East Coast, doing the jobs themselves, the brain power that would be focused on growing that business or doing more in that business. There's a lot of energy that's expended just in that process. So from a business standpoint, I really think that things were great. And I think it can be that way with everything that you do. It's not, and you said it earlier, it's not the situation that's happening to you around the world. It's what is the situation doing for you to help lift you from where you are, or what windows are opening that weren't open before that you now have an opportunity to see through to get to where you need to be, and what situations are you currently in that it could be changed because you're now taking a closer look at them. So for me, I would tell you that it's been a great year. I'm sorry that there's suffering going on in the world. I think that suffering has always been going on in the world, and I think now maybe people are looking at it differently, or maybe they see it hitting a little closer to home. But I don't see much has changed for us to the negative. It's only been to the positive.
Right. And that's not to say that I'm not going to speak for you, think that what's going on is ultimately like an amazing, good idea and that there's not corruption behind it, by the way. I'm just saying you have to always come back to what can you control and how do you handle situations and what is this showing you? What's the mirror of what's going on for you? Russell Brand wrote a post today on his Instagram page that said, does being famous make you crazy or insane? And I didn't really listen to the episode or anything, but what I wrote down was, because I did comment on it, was that it just amplifies who you really are. So if someone comes into money or fame and they don't know who they are, then all of their deepest wounds and the way that they act gets amplified. And that's what made me realize, and please, this is not me saying I'm famous. I'm not at all. But when I was wanting to have a bigger community and when I wanted to make more money and I was chasing money and it wasn't really based in a belief system like it is now, I realized that if I would have been successful then, I would have fallen flat on my face because I wouldn't have been doing it for the right reasons. And I wouldn't have had the connection. I wouldn't have had the plan or the strategy or the long-term knowing who I am, knowing and respecting who I am, and knowing my boundaries, knowing my personality, know who's right for me, who's not right for me, who I'm right for, like all of that.
Well, it's building a foundation on sand, and that's never a good spot to be in. Your foundation has got to be built on bedrock. It's got to be built on something solid. And until you're solid about who you are and being comfortable with yourself, it's going to be really hard to be in love with someone and have a great relationship with someone unless you're in love with yourself. And I think that it's really challenging, whether it's business or personal. You cannot build that foundation of your business or that foundation of your relationships on something that is unstable.
Well, anything on conditions, or yes, other people. And when you rely on other people, it's victimizing and it doesn't feel good. And it isn't solid or steady or secure. So one of the things that I want to go over some of the relationship stuff that we have learned. So what would you say you learned, or if you want me to go first, I can, but what did you learn about yourself? Oh, actually, before we get to that, think about that. As you were talking about the planning, and when we did that planning in Terranea last year on January 1st, and of course we were at a location in Palos Verdes at a resort spa. We had pedicures, we went in the pool, we were in our robes, we were eating outside, having champagne. Yeah, that's not going to be happening this year. But we will be in Ojai with Michael Neely. We will be doing some of the same practices. We're going to go for a hike. Won't quite be the same environment that we were in last year, but we'll be doing the same processes. But now I realize, you know what we did not do? While we planned the business, we did not plan the personal. And I remember my acupuncturist years ago saying to me, you are a great example of what you preach in that you're always here every week. You take care of your body. You do all the things. And I know that my accountant years ago when I was married could say, and she laughed about what we both valued. And she knew I valued wine, travel, and health because that's where I spent my money. And it's very easy to see when you do your books, where do you spend your money? And I've always invested, always, no matter how much money I was making. I found a way. I always invested in my health. I still go to this day. I've gone in and out of different acupuncturists, but I go to Yosan University, which is, and until we move, which is pretty close by. It's an acupuncture school, and I work with the interns. And it ranges from $30 to $40 a session, and I usually get herbs, so we're talking $50 to $60, maybe max, but normally 30 to 40 that I'm paying for a session, and I go every week. And I know that that's not always possible. And I have worked with other people who charge $100 a session, and I've gone every other week or whatever. But even again, when you look at, you want to know what you value, look at where you spend your money and where you spend your time. And I've always been the person who goes to workshops, the person who's reading the books, who's wanting to do this self-help work, not because I was unhappy, because I wanted to be better or I didn't want things to stop me. And I think I've done pretty well in manifesting and attracting the life that I want because I've been doing that. I haven't waited until something really bad happened to look at it. I've taken the cue from my life and from my emotions or from my results and said, I want better than this, or I want to grow, or what can I do? What can I learn? So I think, Doug Sandler, what I'd like us to do in the next couple of days when we do this practice on the 31st, and on the 1st, we'll do the reflection practice on the 31st, and we'll do our goals on the 1st. I would like us to talk about our relationship goals, like what it is we want for our relationship. And, because a couple of years ago, we went to Getting the Love That You Want workshop with Harville and Helen at Esalen.
Yeah, that was great.
And that was great. And it was a great, and I think we even talked about maybe doing it every year, as a refresher or a way to just spend time, focus on our relationship, because again, in law of attraction, what you focus on expands. If you want a better relationship and you spend no time working on yourself or with your partner, you can't expect a better relationship. As Doug was saying, if you have no plan, it's not going to magically just change. Now, you can change, and when you change, it affects how others respond to you, but it still requires you putting in time and effort into doing the practices, into changing the habits and patterns and behaviors that you have. It's replacing some of the belief systems or neural pathways with new ones. Like, you literally need to spend quality time working on yourself. So I know some of you have heard this. If you're in the Inner Circle membership, you know this story. Not too long ago, I was a little triggered by some fears that I was having, and I couldn't make peace with it. And sometimes it takes me, I work on my own stuff, and a lot of times, given some time between my intuition and the tools that I have, I usually can figure out and let it go. Well, this wasn't going anywhere. It was a new thing for me because I've stepped into a new place in business and in life in the last year and a half. And so this was new, and I couldn't shake it, and I didn't know why. So I reached out and had a session with Dr. Sri Carter-Scott, and I might have already talked about this on the show. Now that I have so many more shows, I can't keep track of where I'm telling the story. So apologize if I'm repeating this. But I had a session with her, and she coached me very differently than I'd ever been coached before. It was very unique. It was more cerebral, wasn't emotional. But within 40 minutes, I knew exactly what the root was of the issue I was having. And the root was like what was left over that I needed to forgive myself for my marriage. And it's because I needed the emotional release also. I felt pretty complete at 40 minutes. I mean, we went to the 60-minute mark, but, we talked about what I needed to do and complete to sort of move through this. And one of the things I needed to do was to emote. I needed to emote, and I knew that Doug would help me. And so I asked him after the session, I said, he was making dinner, and I said, hey, can you help me by doing the couples dialogue with me? I don't need anything from you. I just need you to hold the space for me because I need to let this go. I need to let this out. I need to share this. I need to breathe through it. I need to find it, dig it out, let it release it, and then I need to kind of reset. And he was like, of course. So we had dinner, and then I grabbed my sheets and we went downstairs, and I did a process, and I won't necessarily go into that process here, but that was my knowing that I needed to do something different. So I needed someone else's perspective to uncover what this was really about. And I had no idea, because it was a business matter that was looking at me and my lack of forgiveness of me not being able to fix other people, or not being able to get through to them, or to have the right tools for them, or to be that savior help. I'm not trying to save everybody, but when I put in effort to someone who's asking for help, but they're not ready to receive the help, I still was a little sticky with being a little bit more not taking it personally, but feeling like, well, can I try harder? Can I give you more? Like, I wanted to take more responsibility than is mine to take, because I'm just used to accepting all responsibility because it's been working for me. But it's now learning how to do half and half. So just with, few words, Doug, can you talk about from the perspective of, it was me working through it, you were just there to support me as my partner. How did you feel about me asking you? Because I'm thinking about any of the women or even men who are listening to this who think, well, I don't know how I do that. I don't know if my partner would support me. I think they would feel uncomfortable. What are they supposed to do? Like, how did you handle that?
Well, I think any partner that has value in the position of their partner would, of course, provide the space. And you have to be able to provide the space without taking anything that is said in that space personally. Oftentimes, I think that we go into, especially guys, we go into fix-it mode. We go into, oh man, well, let me help you with that, or can we talk about that? You weren't looking for my opinion. You weren't looking for even any feedback. You were just looking for me to be able to hold the space and be there to either hug you or listen to you, or just be there and listen. So for me, I did not attach any feelings to that. Not that I didn't have empathy for you. I certainly did. I heard you, and I could hear you working through all of those. What was the thing that you kept saying over and over again? I forgive myself for. Is it something like that?
Yep.
So you kept going through that, and I'm thinking, man, she's really had to work through a lot of stuff. So I looked at it from, okay, I wanted to hear and feel and be in your head to hear what you had to work through, instead of, let me listen to what you're saying and provide my judgment, or there was no judgment at all. So I think that I don't want to make provide advice for anybody that's in your community when it comes to relationships and how they're dealing with their partner. But I can tell you how I dealt with it, and it was just providing that space. I don't think that I've ever provided space in my life until my relationship with you.
But you didn't know what that meant.
I had no idea what that meant. I would think it was some airy-fairy esoteric thing that was out there to provide space. I thought it was something that just people that were, totally immersed in the woo community would say to each other. But now I get it. It's been several years, and now I get it. I understand what does providing that space mean? It means exactly that. Give that environment to your partner and listen to what they're saying or doing or feeling without judgment, without response, but be there to be empathetic so that you can feel what they are feeling as well.
Well, I'm sure it helps to have the script that we use. The couples dialogue script gives it a little framework that you don't have to, because you're just following the directions pretty much on when it's between us.
Listen, I wrote a book in 2015 called Nice Guys Finish First, and as a part of writing the book, one of my agreements with my publisher was I was going to go in and read it in the studio. And I remember going into the studio and working on this 6-hour day of reading these 150 pages. And I remember as I'm reading it, I'm like, I kept wanting to go off script. No matter if I had that piece of paper in front of me with the couples dialogue or not that says just read the lines, you always want to, or people have a tendency to want me, when I say we, universal we, or me, we, but there are many people that probably have that desire to, okay, I get what the script says, but let me just throw this in. No, there is no, but just let me. It's the reality of it is read the script, stay there, feel the feelings, and you'll have your turn. If you're in the couples dialogue and you want to do both sides of the couple's dialogue, you will have your turn to not respond, but to share some of the reasons why you're reacting to your partner's words the way that you're reacting is because of not your partner, but because of the wounds that you have and the scripts that are happening in your own head about your own issues.
Yeah. And then that was just an example of I used it with him and gave, and again, I think a lot of women expect men to read your minds. Not going to happen. This is where you have to tell them what you want and what you need. I said, can you support me? I need you to hold the space for me to process this. I'm going to use the couple's dialogue, but you don't need to say anything, right? So when you tell your partner everything you need them to do and ask them if they'll do that, they say yes or they say no. But if you just lunge into your emotion and expect them to understand the container you're asking them to provide, then it's frustrating.
I want to add this also. Both sides of that holding the space are essential. So both sides of the space are really important. Not only is the person that's holding the space need to be able to do that and listen without judgment or exchange or words, the person on the other side, the one that's sharing the information, has got to feel disconnected to a degree with the reaction of the person that's sitting across from them. Because when you start to say something and you're expecting the empathy to come out like immediately, I don't think that's not what the space holding is all about. The space holding is just for you to have a partner that's there, that's listening, and that is not necessarily sharing what their feelings are or their solutions to the problem. So as a person that's providing the information, don't be connected to that person across from you like, well, why aren't you helping me? Or why are you, you have to be as disciplined as the space holder in what your expectations are for that moment.
Yeah, it's a practice. And I think we've talked about it many times on the show. I want to just talk about one brief thing that we did learn this year, or I'm not saying we, I don't mean to be speaking for you, but something that just kept coming up. I want to give an example of the power of when you have a little argument and you think it's not a big deal, and then the argument happens again and again and again. My question to you is, how many times does it need to happen before you dive into what's really underneath it? So this particular argument, which I've talked about in the inner circle, it happened about 3 times at least. It was when we started doing Green Chef this year, and I would be making dinner, and a lot of the vegetables are not normal vegetables that Doug is used to eating. And, but to me, they're keto and they were healthy and they were organic and they, had good flavors because they were all put together very nicely. And we'd get to dinner and he would not necessarily eat them, or he would only taste it and give me the rest of it. And I would have sort of a negative reaction, which felt to him like a parent scolding him for not eating his food. I brushed it off, but it happened 3 times. And by the 3rd time, and I understood where he was coming from. I don't think he thought I did, but I did. But I knew he didn't understand where I was coming from. Doesn't make it okay. It's just that I knew he didn't know why I was doing this. So I said, let's do a couples dialogue. So we scheduled it for, 4:00 on a Wednesday or something. And then you did what in preparation?
I don't remember. What did I do?
You pulled out the feelings and needs list, and you
right,
wrote out all of your needs.
Yeah, yep, I do remember that. I went and I got it, and I'm like, okay, why am I feeling what I'm feeling?
Okay, and so then we met in the bedroom instead of at the kitchen table or downstairs where sometimes we do these practices, or in his office where we are now. And he needed autonomy. He needed respect, not necessarily from me. Again, for those of you who have done this practice, you know how it goes. It's not really about making your partner change their behavior in order so you feel better, but it's acknowledging your needs, and then you act accordingly and ask for help to get those needs met. But at the root of it for me, which I don't think Doug was aware of, correct me if I'm wrong, but the root of it for me was, and I said, and it was good to create space, I said, when it comes to my health, do you have any expectation or fear in the future that you will be responsible for taking care of me or making decisions for my health?
No.
Right. And I said, well, that's not true for the opposite. So it was me. Now, that doesn't make it right. I'm just saying my fear is that, health is a habit, not an event, and everything you do now affects you in years to come. You're literally everything you eat, everything you think, everything you do is an investment in your future. And when you see people who are very unhealthy in their later lives, you think, well, you had a really rough life or you didn't, right? And sometimes people try to make up for 30, 40 years of bad health with, some miraculous thing. And I'm not saying that can't be helpful and it can't work, but it's a lot harder to go to doing a 180 than to just practice investing and being proactive about where you want to be going now. So we had that conversation, and I, when you want to add anything about how you received that or how that worked for you?
I just received it as not the couples dialogue, but the responses to begin with. What was going on in my head was not during the couples dialogue, but when you were making the comments to me, it took me back to a childhood spot that was really challenging for me, which was the hurry up and eat, or it was the you need to eat all that, and it really just took me back to a position of like, okay, I'm my own person now. I'm able to. So the couples dialogue was really good for me because it gave me the ability to share with you like where this is coming from. I mean, that's what the couples dialogue does. It gives your partner a chance to take a little peek into what's going on in your head and why are you doing this and why are you responding this way. So I think it was a very beneficial conversation because it gave me the ability to, without feeling defensive or judged, and that's the beauty of the couples dialogue. There's no judgment during that couples dialogue, and there's no assumption that you're there to solve a problem for me. It's just opening up and letting me share what my feelings are, and you do the same. So I think that couples dialogue in 2020 especially, it gave me the opportunity. Let's say the first 2 years I had my training wheels on. And in this past year, I was on my big boy bike. I was on my two-wheeler and really feeling like I wasn't being taught a lesson during the couples dialogue. I was contributing and participating in the couples dialogue as an adult. And as a grown adult, it feels really good to be able to participate rather than just be a passenger. You're actually participating in something that's big. And I think that's great for relationships. It gives you power.
What do you think we need to work on, or what do you think you need to work on in 2021?
I still need to work on my relationship skills. My communication skills need to be better. Sharing my feelings in the moment. I know I need to release a lot of there's still, tension and stress in some of the daily activities that I go through. There's still a lot of connection to some of the childhood wounds that were created. So for me, I need to do more work on myself, but having the tools oftentimes is great knowing you have the tools, and now you just need to do the work.
Another way you could commit to that, I'm smiling right now for those of you that can't see us, like working with somebody occasionally, that's not me, whether it be a coach, a therapist, somebody, I'm just saying, I've done plenty of therapy and coaching. Like I just mentioned, I worked with Dr. Sri Carter Scott, and I'm open to having that kind of feedback and coaching when I'm stuck. But not only that, it also gives you the space of committing to doing it, right? Because if you don't commit to doing it, then it's like, oh, I'm only going to do it when I'm uncomfortable. So which really never gets you too much further than where you are. And what I thought about also that I want us to work on, I would like since we've been doing our practice now since you moved here. So it's been almost 2.5 years that we've been doing a practice. And I think it's time for an upgrade, a practice upgrade. We commit to the exercise, but I was kind of not really reading the books that we're making. I want to do a new practice. I'm ready for the next level practice for us. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but we'll talk about it and create that plan this week. So those are some of the things that we're working on. I definitely am getting better at boundaries. I also want to make a relationship plan. There's a lot of things in the works right now for us personally as well as professionally. So I want to make sure that we do this with grace and ease and balance. And that when we get into stressful times like moving, buying a house, like when that happens, that there's a balance there, that I ask for help, that I invest in help, that I don't lose my mind, that we keep communication lines open, that we take time off. So I hope you guys got some value out of today's episode. I'm hoping that, just like the rest of the show, that something sparked an idea or reminded you of something that you need to do. But the bottom line is always that when you put time and attention into things that you want to have happen, you ask for help, you invest in them in some way, shape, or form, you get support and accountability. That's what adds, nutrients to the soil. You can plant the seed and walk away and hope that it grows. But if you tend to it and you nurture it over time, it will grow. It has to, because your energy is being put into it. And, the best gardeners know that your crops are better when you spend the time and energy there, and you're watching it, and you're every step of the way, you're attending to it. And it's part of the joy and love of life. So I hope that you have an amazing New Year's Eve, no matter what you do. I hope that you take a moment to reflect on what you have accomplished this year, what has worked for you, and even in the worst of it, why that needed to happen to propel you forward into the next version of you. And I'm here to support you. I hope you'll consider joining the Inner Circle membership. The price will go up in March, and we are doing a manifestation challenge January 1st, as well as some exercise accountability and anything else that you need within the month of January. So I appreciate that you're a part of this community. I hope that you are continuing to get value, and I hope that you'll reach out when you're ready to take it to the next level. And Doug, I love you. I appreciate your relationship. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your flexibility. I appreciate you being open to new things, being ready, being easy, fun. You're a happy person. You want the best out of life. And I am so happy we finally found each other.
I love you too, baby. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Another episode, a great year coming.